Streaming started.
Fabulous. So, hi everyone. Welcome to today's CYP scrutiny board review. So I just want to pop round first and just everybody can just introduce themselves. We've got a slightly different scrutiny board than we had last year. So I'm Councillor Truella. So chair. I used to be vice chair for the last couple of years. This year taking over chair.
Councillor Stephen Farr for Elveston South Ward, and I'm vice chair this year.
Councillor Matthew Ann for Oakwood Ward.
Councillor Richard Hudson, Charleston North. Paul Nightingale, and Sharon Woodward, Director of Learning Community Service.
I'm Seti Birmingham Council Leaving Ward.
I'm Ellie Lansdale, Councillor.
Cecile Wright, Councillor for Arboretum Ward.
Craig Stanley, Democratic Services Manager.
Perfect. So moving straight on to the agenda. So have you got any apologies, Craig?
Just apologies from Councillor Ashby, Andy Smith, Sue Ann Lynn.
For late items, I can confirm that there are none at the moment. Does anyone have any declarations of interest at all? Fabulous. Are the minutes of last meeting agreed and true and correct? Record of what happened? Anybody got any queries or anything on that? Fabulous. So we'll go straight on to our first report. So first report on the agenda is about the management of those school exclusions and emotionally based school non-attendance. So let's take the item into two parts. So firstly covering the management of school exclusions and then moving on to the emotionally based school non-attendance. So we've got Paula Nightingale and Sharon Buckby. They're in attendance with us to present the reports. So Paula, I'll pass over to you to present the information on school exclusions, if that's all right.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is a high-level summary of the exclusions and suspensions in the based school and exclusion suspensions started. So this is the activity for this academic year and the performance against the benchmark data. And this is just the work that we do as a local authority in partnership to ensure that we have got children on the so in terms of the reasons, exclusions were given, they must be according to and in line with the principles of law. There are two types, so we've got 6 terms exclusions, i.e. suspensions, up to that capacity of 45 school days in single academic year. And then we've got those permanent exclusions where it is defined as such that the child can't actually return to their schools. And this all must be administered against the Department of Education guidance, and Derby City Council, my teams monitor the suspension for all schools through monthly day submissions, and we've got a date, a daily and also those schools to inform the dispositions when we also has the legal mandate to provide full-time education from the 6 days of exclusion, and there's more of that on the one. And of course we've got to adhere to safe code practice and look after children once delivering this mandate. And the way that it's done is that when a head teacher decides to exclude people, they must notify parents for the period of exclusion and the reasons. And it's unlawful to exclude anybody in terms of formal exclusions, sometimes called an off-rolling, for example. So all of this must be formally recorded. And it's very important once that is done to understand and take regard of the child's individual circumstances. It's essential because what we're doing once suspension exclusion is done is to ensure that the child can actually then engage with the process as well, whether it's a quick turnaround in terms of suspension or another provision, or indeed a full turnaround from back to mainstream education. It must be done with regard of those things. Then going fully into the exclusions and the numbers, so there we're saying that we've had 33 exclusions in the city this academic year. I can update that figure is now 36. Again, the rise is the primary number. We are in terms of secondary exclusions with low national average and primary exclusions with just at national in terms of the trends that we have, if we take the 1920s where we saw quite high permanent exclusions at primary age, primary level with 80 permanent exclusions, and COVID era, which is when we go into the COVID era, the 3 year trend is again lower than the pre-COVID era where there were 38 pupils excluded. So if we consider the total where we're at now, we've made some significant progress in terms of the city with those support mechanisms that we have for panels to reduce and keep that lower rate of permanent exclusions to that of 1923. In terms of the secondary permanent exclusions, and again, what's notable here is the number and percentage of those who've got SEN or other needs, such as social care needs through early help, or in terms of SEND needs, when we're looking at that, it's not just those EHCP youngsters, it's those with additional educational needs. So vulnerability is increasing in terms of the permanent exclusions as well. And in terms of secondary, yes, we've had a rise, but it's nothing like we had in terms of the COVID era. And if we look at that, we currently have 29 secondary exclusions this year. And if we look into those reasons, which are significant, if we look at this reporting, it's the physical assaults that are the key reasons for the number of increase, particularly with the primary age youngsters. It's something that we didn't really have years gone by, although the disruptive behaviour is something that we see still in the secondary age, but it is that significance of violence that is causing those exclusion numbers, and indeed the conversation around those in-year access panels quite lengthy. In terms of then as to how we monitor that and manage it is through the fair access protocol. So every local authority has to have one, and all schools, so that is including preschool academies, must participate in that local authority's fair access protocol. Our fair access protocol is very, very strong, and those protocols are triggered when a parent or carer of an eligible child is not secured based on the normal admissions procedure. The parent has to give their consent to be part of that, or indeed if we are actually having something as excluded youngster put through those, then the school can actually put that child through those in their access plans. And where they are at higher risk of exclusion. Particularly want to notify that what we are trying to do is that when we have a youngster who has been permanently excluded or an exclusion, we have that exit pathway to find a return back into mainstream education. So that in the fair access panel, we meet twice a month. The membership is extensive, so I chair that panel. We have head teachers there, we've got respectful collaboration schools there, so that's where we've got that Bridge Street school to go through. We've got youth justice service, early help, in their access, exclusion student course, virtual school for that commissioning, and we've got health representatives as well. Those panels are also then monitored and reviewed by a particular steering group, which is again made of senior leaders across education, health, and social care, and they meet biannually. In terms of budget that we have, it's small but it's effective, and that is again going through behaviour strategy, goes through in-year fair access protocols. We have got behaviour strategy meetings, and we've got a budget there of 0.17 million in terms of those going through in-year fair access process, and we have got then some money to put through this behaviour strategy. The types of interventions that we use the money for through the behaviour strategy, they're things like social, emotional, mental health support, interventions where youngsters might go to alternative provision, or it is support through the assistant educational psychologist. It does have things like supported placements, admissions, managed move or corporate normal admissions where we give support or do registered alternative provision. But the focus in all this is to try and support mainstream education for all. And that's where that extensive support is given and monitored through those panels and that particular group. One of which I need to mention is the Fresh Start process, which is something that is very, very successful in the city indeed. And if we consider the number of children who've gone through the in-year their access, that totals at 442. So that's a sizable school, isn't it? The number of youngsters that we've supported through those panels. And within, and I say, within budget. So that is something to note. Also, through that behaviour strategy, so once you've gone through the in-year access panels, you may then refer somebody to the strategy, and from there, it's particularly complex. We've got multi-agency panel where we've had significant social care and police involvement, which required a holistic package. And throughout this year, I'm glad to say that we've only had one young person who's needed that type of support. So those are panels. And now, in terms of, and that compromises your exclusion suspension. So now I'm talking about the suspensions then. Again, what we usually see, suspensions are high, exclusions might be lower, and we've certainly had a bit of a rise in terms of suspensions in our primary years, but still we are, and we have been above national level in terms of suspensions, but we are really, really coming down on those because at the moment we have got 3,163 suspensions for this academic year. So if we compare, so that's today's figure, and if we compare this, say 2024, 4,745 together, we're coming down, and those figures. So those figures are the kind of rise that we've had before. We look at some particular schools in the city, and we've had leadership as well in terms of schools where the strategies that we have and have spearheaded through the local authority, they have really taken hold, and that's a particular success within. But the high number rate of suspensions, again, if we then break that down into those vulnerabilities that we have in schools in terms of SEN, EACPs, or social care involvement, that's on the rise. That is something yourselves to do. And to support the early intervention, we've done another measure. So this year we've gone through an extensive restructure in the services. So now the previous, welfare education welfare service has been remodeled, but not only just remodeled, but also the focus being attendance behaviour. So that's the inclusion of school attendance team, and we've already gone through the school circular, which is the regular engagement with schools to those on a particular officer, we call it SPOC, so single point of contact for each school, whereby there is continuous every week contact with the attendance lead and also the leads for those such like safe codes we often have, but that's actually looking into the whole kind of pastoral support, your SEN, looked after children and behaviour, to have that support and then have those kind of themes within schools, looking into every single data to ensure that we support the vulnerable, those vulnerable in their schools, in the city, to attend and support those risk of exclusion and discuss them, because this is not just kind of local authority panels, it really is kind of local area work that supports the attendance and this is closely linked to the inclusion strategy group. So what was noted is that we've got 103 schools have insights into the inclusion strategy, and we've just had a very good successful conference on that. We also need to address the increase of the aggressive behaviour, which is done through the area inclusion partnership. So we've got a work stream which is just focused on that, i.e. what we're actually going to practically do in terms of the aggression that we see that is then resulting on exclusion. Again, to note, this is not just a Derby issue, it's something that we see rising nationally. So I think that includes the exclusion.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Some really good figures and stuff in there. It's nice to see that a lot of them are coming down now, which is good. It means that it's working. A couple of shocking ones there about that kind of pre-pandemic suspensions were so low, but it is really good that we've come down since the previous year. So some nice positive stuff there for us. Has anybody got any questions at all? Councillor, do you want to go first?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your report. Yes, it is encouraging that there's a downward trend, and in particular where permanent exclusions are concerned, because I'm of the view if a child has to be taken out of school temporarily or permanently, then that might be indicative of the fact that the education system isn't working for the child or the young person. So I think it's good that through the various initiatives and programs and activities that you're undertaking in collaboration with the education institutions, that hopefully they're assisting. In terms of the profile of children that are suspended and excluded, what are the disparities in terms of gender, socio-background and ethnicity, please? And what happens where a child is removed, suspended or excluded from school within the academies? Whose responsibility is it to ensure that the child's education isn't disrupted? So there are just a few questions and observations. Thank you.
Yeah, just Councillor Rice, on my side too, which is sort of breakdown of suspensions and permanent exclusion, and Councillor two highlighted, and there are three schools that are on suspension and permanent exclusion. We work very closely with those schools. There is no, because we have a legal duty around permanent exclusion and suspensions, whether a school is a campus is not relevant. And actually, the school do everything they possibly can that they see exclusion, permanent exclusion as a last resort. Even where there's been a life brought into the school, even with a last resort, only if we cannot see that arrange, the opportunity to support the child there has been time limited interventions, work with parents, work with the family as a whole, as opposed to just with the child. So yeah, we're very clear on that. It's more males than females, ethnicity, white British.
Okay. Thank you.
It's nice to know the numbers are lower than 2020, but if I go to 4, we go to 4.2, it says the trend for primary exclusions over the last 3 years has seen a year-on-year increase. If that was correlated with a percentage ratio of the total numbers of pupils over the inclusion list, would it actually show an increase or not? Because I would expect pupil numbers to grow.
Pupil numbers have come down slightly.
So if this was correlated as a percentage, it would actually show a sharper increase.
It wouldn't be that sharp because they are so low. But given the fact that I haven't done the maths on this, I think I can come back to you with that. But
you have a question or ask?
I do. What's, is there obviously more actually sharper?
These are just the raw numbers.
They are the wrong numbers. Our rates won't be determined until the end of the academic year and then the analysis of risk. But we can do, say that it's comparative rather than a significant increase on the basis of why some schools have dropped. It's almost flatlined in terms of population. And the secondary population has increased dramatically. So if you think about that, it's proportionate. Does that make sense?
Sorry, Councillor Armstead.
My question was around staff and staff training. So the SEND is a major issue. What are we doing around making sure that staff, PTAs, support staff are appropriately trained? I know of several young people whose placement at school have collapsed, not necessarily because of behaviour, but because of lack of staff who are able to meet their needs. So I'm particularly thinking about complex needs around personal hygiene and stuff that needs to be facilitated in the classroom, not in the classroom, but in the school environment. So is there...
There is no reason why school cannot be any child, including those with personal hygiene. The supporting children with medical needs within school, so if their personal hygiene is linked to a medical need, then the schools have a duty to respond to that to make sure it's supported by the school nursing team. So there is no reason for children to be excluded on that basis. It would actually be a policy there. So if schools are saying they can't meet need, then if they have an EHCP, then that can only be done through emergency manual review. If that has not taken place, because then we can make sure that relevant health provision is put into place, cognitive behavioural. So there is no reason why that should happen. There is sufficient support from specialist school nurses as well as school nurses to support schools to meet these and just make things stay where they are. So there should be no need for that. And with regards to EHCPs, there are very few children excluded regarding EHCPs. For those with sensitive Paul talked about additional needs. So we split SEND down into SEND EHCP, SEND SEND support. It's SEND support students. Often they're categorised as SEND support, but there are a wider environmental factors that impact the child in school. So not to do with SEND, but it's the only way that schools can categorise where there's additional needs. So at the moment that's a bit of a failure within the education system for accurately categorising children and therefore it's so they fall under one major category rather than development
as opposed to an individual who has considered.
Yeah, and it could be due to domestic violence and going home and maybe the risk tolerance attachment. So you talked about workforce development.
So what are we doing to train our staff?
So we have workforce development program. Special schools mainstream schools are social education, got positive strategies, as well as inclusive curriculum work. There's a broader piece of work with health where there's support for schools and trainers in continuous healthy management. There's a whole programme across the Inclusion Partnership with and coordination of the Inclusion Charter, where we've had nearly 3,000 teachers now trained in trauma attachment, and there's work going on currently around trauma attachment in the classroom where there might be volume levels, so higher levels of children with experiences of that could be cost of living, it could be rights, it could be a whole range of different areas and how we need to take that. So huge work there. Annually, around 35 schools engaged in play therapy, art therapy, cross-school work, it's an ongoing program, but we are really, really keen. The area that we need to grow in as well is so there is a larger program of work as well with regards to workforce.
Perfect. Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go for it.
Not the same question. So obviously when a school system breaks down, there's a family, there's a school, there's two stories, um, and potentially a family that doesn't trust that their story is being told. What sort of provisions are in place that make sure that the family story is properly represented, or if there's a safeguarding concern within the family that is highlighted, and the school's process is transparent and
For
open?
exclusions and suspensions.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is a process and probably discuss more around that. So whilst the schools come to an inclusion at the end of our engagement to discuss, there must be engagement with parents beforehand. Where that's challenging, we now have terms that are able to help to support families already. Whilst we're there, we support, we look at the reasons and we challenge for a permanent solution. So if we see for any reason, if it's a child who's looked after on a children's social care, we have a local school that will give that support for all of the children. For those children in the education and health care fund, that's the SEND team that give that support to the family. For all of the children, we have an inclusion school, SEND extends and inclusion in the fair access practices in the schools. So we do that brokering over December council, so there is something we can navigate that with them. And if there's a requirement for a challenge at to chair governors for a family solution, we will support a family in that challenge or try and get that family solution beforehand. But think because of potential breakdown in communication, what might be the best solution for the child might not be to stay at school, it might be to independent. Yeah, just to add to Charles, we continue to review that family choice. So we'll be obviously engaged in that process to ensure that we're in the next step that supports.
Thank you.
Any other questions from everybody? No, fabulous. So thank you. So let's move on to the other part of the report. So the emotionally based school non-attendance, please. So Paul, do you want to take over this part?
So EBSNet, as we call it, so emotion-based school non-attendance, was identified as part of the report on education investment area. This program will conclude in 2025 this year, March. But what's notable from that and the kind of extensive Sharon already referred to the extensive program and training that we've had is that it has had a real impact on schools, both agency systems and behaviours. So that development program that we've put through, then 92% of the teachers report that they feel better prepared in terms of emotionally based offenders, agenda in school for most youngsters. And what's really cool is that 48% of parents who report this feel more confident in schools to be able to support their children. So that is something that's really on the foundations of this pathway that was being developed. And this academic year was the first year that we had the Health Needs Panel and this particular pathway, and we will see that pathway on Appendix 1. And that is just a reference to the medical needs. So this extra pathway is a referral process and it's written into that policy to support children. With medical needs, and that was reviewed in September 2024 in readiness of this panel. In terms of school attendance due to non-attendance due to emotional reasons, these are the percentages. Again, this is based on medical data getting organised in the school year from term. Absence plus recorded as illness was 3.5%, and it's 0.2 greater than the national percentage. So very, very slightly above that average, but still wanted to put it in here because this is the new process. We discussed all of those referrals that come through. Again, it's a very, very extensive panel. We meet twice term, but in terms of that kind of discipline that we have, different people that we have in terms of health, you know, and CAMS particularly, we always talk about CAMS, and yes, that is something that's very, very top of that referral pathway and exit pathway that schools are advised to follow with these youngsters. But we have got that membership there within that panel. The referrals that we discussed this year, we've had 40 referrals this year on 4.5 15 versus 36, but since this report was written and the last panel happened last week, we've had 40 referrals. And again, what we've been talking about there is social emotional mental health, physical trauma attachment, and want to point out that that trauma attachment seems to be something that is following us through panels, and particularly significant for exit panel. In terms of the attendance for these youngsters, it's from 0 to 96%, that we have seen through that, and those with physical illnesses usually will see that higher part of the attendance. Now, what this panel can also give is that turnaround placement and castle, so that's how they are through provision. And again, I stress that it's a turnaround placement, again, focusing on youngsters, older schools, and youngsters. And we can, schools can actually refer at any time. So we do monitor youngsters who've been referred. So we look at everybody, and we also discuss as to how the youngsters developed in the following panel. So it's not just a referral and dropping the line. It is actually seeing that young person through their educational journey, because that development can be at times very, very slow. So again, we have really increasing professional health interventions through this pathway. At current, I have also put a questionnaire through our educational psychology service that supports this panel through to our schools and young people to see whether there are any developmental voice or monitor or review for this panel, because it is new, and also the EXO pathway. And that, I think, concludes that part of the report.
Perfect, thank you. I would be very keen to see an update on this after a few months of it kind of working a little bit more. It would be really, really interesting to see that back a few months down the line for sure. Any questions or points from anybody for this part?
Yes, thank you, Chair. You mentioned the 40 referrals that we've had so far. Do we see that as a good number, or a high number, or a low number? Because obviously, if the number's too low, it suggests people are falling through the gaps or don't know that it's there. If it's too high, it can suggest really endemic problems. So, how do we see 40 in terms of a number good or bad? Or is it a bit too early to tell?
Yeah, well, I'd like to say it's too early to tell, but if we look at the data and what I presented to you as a whole, data, suspensions, exclusions, and those reasons, I think the number is too low. Now, but it's not just about being too low, it's about having the right youngsters reporting through. Because what we also see is that sometimes the ones that have come through might be premature because we've actually not gone through that excellent pathway. So it's a yes and no answer. So what Sharon was just talking about in terms of the training and development that we need not only for our staff but the school staff, the process needs to mature, and we need to really embed that training, which we've now had, so that we see the right referrals coming through. But I would appreciate more.
Perfect. Any other questions, Tom? No? Okay. So we'll move to the end of this item then. Next thing on the agenda is the work programme refresh. So hopefully today we'll be setting out our work programme for the upcoming year. So the board have taken a slightly different approach to this work programming compared to previous years, which Craig is going to talk us through.
Thank you, Chair. So, as members will be aware, at the first meeting of each municipal year, scrutiny committees set out their work programme, which essentially acts as a forward plan, setting out what topics you would like to consider at which meetings. Dem Services has taken this as an opportunity to refresh and improve our work programming, which we hope this report today facilitates. The report is split into two parts. The first part is just outlining some of the key principles and best practices of what good scrutiny looks like, and that is largely informed by guidance from national organisations such as the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. The crucial bit, which is outlined in the recommendations, is the suggested questions that committee should be asking when considering whether to look at an item in committee. So those four questions are, do we understand the benefits scrutiny would bring to this issue? How could we best carry out work on this subject? What would be the best outcome of this work? How would this work engage with the activity of the executive and other decision makers, including partners? I should say as well that a form of this report has been going to each of the scrutiny bodies as well, ensuring that everyone's aligned and on the same page. The second part of the report, I guess, is just some horizon scanning. So what sort of issues and topics might be worth considering in the key service areas that this scrutiny body looks at, and I think Sharon and Gamal might be able to talk about some of the ones that are already in the report there.
Yeah, perfect. I'm just going to hand over to you. I don't know who wants to go first. Gamal, do you want to give us a... Yeah, what sort of areas we could cover and look at, yeah.
On that, we've done on a couple of occasions more separate
Yeah, thanks, Chad. So I just thought I was smattering of things that we do.
I love it.
Because we've done, we've covered today a specific cohort, if you look at specific cohorts across the areas that we looked at the question around exclusions and attendance. I thought it might be useful for councillors to be aware of the local area inclusion plan, what we're doing around SEND and inclusion more generally as a partnership. And particularly with the fact that we are looking to inspection in the next academic year. So it would be good for scrutiny to consider what's in motion. We have a sufficiency duty, and this piece of work is actually across myself and Gamal. So there's early years statutory age and post-16 to think about. We have the job we promise, where we're really looking at, and this is a real focus piece of work for the city partnership. So again, understanding where we are with youths in the city, the numbers, high numbers of those not in education, public training, and particularly those under 25. It's going to be a major strand of work and get them working in Schools England. So it might be something that we would like to consider. And then, of course, not to forget our adult learning service, which is also within my area. So just find out what we're doing with our adult learning might be something that councillors would be interested in.
Yeah, definitely. There's some areas as well that we haven't either haven't seen for a while or actually haven't had a report on before. So, well, since I've been in anyway. So, no, there's some fab areas there. So thinking about these kind of items and things, is there anything anybody specifically would like to look at? I think last year we came up with a couple of bits that don't fall under our remit precisely. I think our social media popped up a lot last year, but we do cross committees with that as well. So it's potentially something if we're still looking into, I can go into more of that. So any ideas really from the floor? Yeah.
One that came up today when we look at before and after school provision for children, thinking about parents in work, how are we doing in city to make sure that all children have access to, so that parents can get to work and come home.
Absolutely. So we've got an school program that we can bring to scrutiny, as well as obviously things you can enter the national initiatives, because and we can give a snapshot, we were aware, as a consequence of our analysis of where all the schools are at, but we can do that. So,
obviously we have the breakfast clubs now in every school, I believe, but or most schools, most primary. I'm thinking
similar pilot.
Okay, so we're going for the majority, right? And the after school care is also quite important as well.
Yeah.
Wraparound support for and it's a case of, is there access to it even external to the council? Is there, do we have a kind of thinking, do we have not a database, but we don't, but do we have a signposting for parents so that they can get access to, with whatever provision they're in, that they can get local access to their. Great. That's what I'm.
I think a good time scale for that as well will be after these holidays are finished, so we can see as well how it went. So potentially looking at bringing that later in the year, potentially early January if you need time. We'll have a little time for you to be able to get a report together. So yeah, it's a good one. Councillor Wright?
Okay, yeah. Page 3, I do welcome the work around needs, training, inclusion, that actually dovetails with what the combined East Midlands Combined Authorities doing in terms of their employment and skills program. So it'd be useful to perhaps do some mapping across when you actually present that particular area. I was looking at the appendix here. I'm not jumping ahead on my chair, and there are a list here of future items. I assume that they're not exhaustive as such. I know this is probably rather wide, but there is an increase in this country of children and young people in poverty. I think it was covered last week extensively in the news of the growth of young people in poverty. I know it's a big area, it's a big topic, but at the end of the day, if children's background or home environmental situation is one of deprivation and one of struggle, then it's bound to impact on what goes off in school. So I just wondered whether there's a scope to actually look at that in any way. I know it's a broad area, but I do think, given the situation at the moment, the growth in deprivation experienced by children and young people in this country, it is something that I think we ought to consider. The other thing is, and this is more in relation to safeguarding. I know we looked quite extensively at safeguarding last time round, but in light of the Casey report that came out, I'm surprised it's not down here, particularly in relation to what the recommendations have said about safeguarding. of young people, vulnerable young people, particularly those who are looked after by the state. So I think we ought to find a way of looking at that and picking out as appropriate recommendations that we need to consider as part of our work programme. You've got education attainment. Sorry, sorry.
Just so we can, yeah.
Sorry, I can go on. Sorry about that.
With regards to deprivation, it's a really good point you make, Councillor Wright. There is some programmes of work, and I'm in discussion with Education and the Foundation around really truly understanding the impact of deprivation on education. So it's something we do have to look at, and we're currently reviewing the outcomes of key stages for level of development, key stage 1, phonics, key stage 2. And one of the areas that we're looking at is where there's been a good increase in practice, where there are high levels of deprivation. We want to see some improved outcomes for children within the localities of these classes or socio-economic 5. So we need to understand what's happening in that way. So we're doing that investigation at the moment, and we'll be reporting that this October. But yes, we are. They're valid for really good points, and there is work in train. It's just sequencing when they can come to the launch.
But I think it's just recognising that education takes place within a context, that we are a society. And then going back to the topic the item we looked at in terms of exclusion, suspensions. So, I mean, we're aware that suspensions, exclusion are is the pipeline into criminality. If you talk to people who are in prison, been in prison, you will find, unfortunately, quite a proportion would have experienced full exclusion. I just wondered whether we could also look at, given the fact that our work is also concerned with young people, anything around the criminal justice system. Is that listed here? It's listed? Right, okay. Right, okay. And particularly in relation to, if we can disaggregate, and I'm sure we'd be able to, where exclusion may have
Something I was thinking as well was that youth justice service. I was going to see how reports come along for that and what timescale you think that would be able to be brought to us. So I think that's quite an important thing. Yes.
Yeah, once we've got a position where there is a
That's fabulous.
had a meeting with Justice Board of the Chief Executive of National Youth Justice, attended that meeting too, to do a high-level review where we found that the inspection was focused on children's outcomes, youth outcomes. So the board meetings, I know the board meetings, and we go through every single time a level of progress and standards, etc. So there will be sufficient council around that as well.
Fabulous, thank you. Councillor Ayala?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Wright really touched on the point I want to make around the case report being something to bring. I wondered whether a report like that would come with a sort of wider coverage of CSE within Derby City. I mean, a bit of context, I grew up in Rotherham, and the fact that I say that and everybody knows what I mean when I say that is part of why this is something I'm very keen for us as a board to look at. Obviously, my hometown was named repeatedly within the reports. I hate to see Derby in that position as well, so it would be really nice to see if as a report came, it could come with a really good coverage where I know before we talked about whether there was a crossover of boards and whether there was a scope for communities board and CYP board to look at
Yeah,
something
I'm quite interested in
like
Borg
this.
as well,
I think it would be interested as well.
which I think would cross over. So it's something we were.
That's something yourself and I, as chairs of the two boards, can take away.
What something can do cross committee thing, I think is a really good idea. We can have a discussion about that after, I think.
And just a pipe dream, is the scope at any point to get some provision to create youth centres for our young people? Just a wish. They need youth centres.
Just to have little ones that might just be sort of a wink towards at some point during one of the meetings, some of them anyway. Dentistry we haven't had last year.
It's on my list.
So dentistry was really, we had our dentistry report I think 2 years ago.
It was September 23.
Or at least very early last year. So it would be really good to hear back about where we're at, because it wasn't great. And we'd love to see improvement. And active travel to school, particularly, how are we encouraging it for children and their parents to make sure children are as much as possible using their feet and their bikes to get there, because we've got all these issues around. I don't know any ward that won't have this issue around the primary school being chocker with cars running their engines before and after school, and inconsiderate parking, all that stuff. Well, one of the ways to deal with this active travel, so what we do is encourage that and things like that. We could talk about cars and the one in the air engines as well, but I think I know it, so.
No, definitely we can link that. And if we are looking at that kind of how we get into school, we can also maybe link in the childhood obesity and stuff as well.
Absolutely.
So maybe then pair them together.
It's
Got you.
They don't have to be independent.
Yeah. What would be a sort of timescale for something like that? Could we get that? What kind of month-ish would you look for something? A report on those? So to make sure you guys have got enough time to pull stuff together as well. Okay, no, that's perfect. So let's put too much pressure on you going, I want this report. So yeah. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, and trying to give them particular subjects as such. We can focus on schools at one point, we can focus on that school travel obesity and another one, kind of giving us little subjects for each meeting might make things flow a little bit easier and make things a little bit easier for officers as well, I think. So fabulous. Councillor Flack?
First of all, I'd like to second what Councillor Wright said about deprivation. I think it's a very important topic. And secondly, I've had all my thunder spoiled because I'm not quick enough. Obesity, we've spoke about this at previous meetings, just to see if there's any improvement that from school entry level up to secondary level, because that's the first thing I wanted to, if we can have a report on something like that, because as I remember rightly from the report that we received, that when children were entering school at 4.5, 5, by the time they left that, go up in my terms, big school, they hadn't really improved a great deal. And I wondered if we can have the sort of statistics on that, if it's improving with younger children, if that can be included in a report as to what's happening with child obesity, particularly nowadays that when healthy school breakfasts are being provided to an awful lot of early years children, and if that's making a difference, if that can be included, please.
That's great. A couple that I really like the Derby Promise. We did see that it was not too long ago. It was a few months ago now. But that one's a really nice one and mixed in with that adult learning service as well. I think they're really important to have a look at. The local area inclusion plan as well. And then I really want to kind of look at that safeguarding and things later as well. So we'll definitely look at those bits. Are we best to try and set something for next time now, or is it better if we take these kind of little sections away and see if we can come up with something next time? We've got to do that way, isn't it?
Perhaps, yeah.
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 Yeah. Fabulous. Right then. Some notes everywhere now. No, that's really, really good. Thank you everybody for your contributions for those. And thank you to officers as well for your reports. Nice and thorough. Really, really good. Just a quick one before we finish. I just want to raise that obviously tonight was 6:30 start instead of 6. I think people kind of struggled to get here for that 6 o'clock, especially when finishing work at 5 and things. Are we okay to continue this start time? Everybody happy with that for future?
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Happy with that.
Wonderful. All right. No other comments, then I'll let you all go home. Thank you so much for today.